It's immensely easier to add on depth of field in a post-effects program like Nuke. It gives us the flexibility to push around where the focal point is and animate it if we need, really getting the focus right to direct the audience's attention at a particular part of our design. What gets really striking in this is the time it takes. In Nuke, putting on depth of field is a few seconds. In Maya, rendering depth of field could be an overnight render, and if it doesn't look right, you're into rendering again. I'll put my depth of field on using the interior sky depth Z image saved out as a targa from FCheck. This way those values are simply mapped as a grayscale. I'll show them, and we can see here that white is close and black is far. Actually, the back wall is fairly gray. I've got some minor things to close up back there, but this should work decently for the time being. Here's how I'll make this work. I'm going to pick this image, my depth, and press K for copy. I'll zoom in a little bit here in my node graph and take the B node of the copy and put it onto Color Correct 2, the last node I have in the flow so far. Now in the copy node, making sure it's showing by selecting it and pressing 1, I'll change the channels I'm copying, dropping down under RGBA alpha and choosing RGBA red. It's customary if you're bringing in a grayscale into another channel to use the first channel of that image. We deal in red, green, blue images, or RGBs, so I'm bringing in red first. Now I'll take the RGBA alpha in the 2 section and change it over to depth.z, taking the value from that grayscale and mapping it into the depth for this sequence. It doesn't look like much is going on yet, because this simply says where is the scene deeper, or where is the depth. Now I'll right-click in the node graph, choose Filter, and Z Defocus. It puts on a Z Defocus node, and we can see it's got 2 inputs on it. An image, our incoming image or sequence, and a filter, and we'd use this if we need a bokeh blur, blurring out into a particular image or shape. I've made sure to pick my Z Defocus node and press 1 to show it in the view. And now I'll take my timeline and pull it down just a little bit. Click in my viewer and press H to fill so I can see it nice and big and really tell how my depth is working. Now what I can do with the depth is take this focal point node and drag it, let's say, onto the second step. Nuke will redraw, and now I've got depth of field in the image. That focal blur is based on that grayscale image. Here in depth of field then, in our Z Defocus node, we've got a depth of field, a size, and a maximum, and also a focal point and coordinates. What I'll do is to bring up the depth of field, pulling it up a little bit towards 0.1. Theoretical depth of field is 0. What that means is that one point is in focus at any given time, and everything blurs out from there. In practice, though, giving it a focal plane thickness, a zone that's in focus instead of a single point, may look a little better and preserve detail that might start to blur out. Then we have a size, and what this does is dictate the amount of blur. The size then is how much blur, and a maximum clips the size at this value, as the tooltip says. When we bring this back down, we stop things that are way far out in distance from turning into blurred messes. What I'll do for this image, because I want a fairly deep depth of field, meaning most things are in focus, is to pull this size down to 1.5 and take the maximum down to, let's see what 3 looks like. Nuke redraws, and I have a little bit of a depth of field blur just on the top can light and circular skylight opening, but most everything in the image is in focus. We can push this just a little bit if we need, trying, for example, 2 and 4, and we get a little bit of blur up on the top on the bridge, but most everything stays nicely in focus. But very subtly, we're using the depth of field to call the audience or viewer's attention to the fine detailing on that handrail on the stairs. As I said, this is so easy to do here, and yet so complex and time-consuming in Maya. As long as we render out a depth pass in some fashion, we can put on our depth of field and adjust it and animate it very interactively, which makes a stunning case for putting on this depth of field in post and really fine-tuning the focal point and area of focus of this image.